Exodus 1821, America's political form of government. Across the centuries, there have been different forms of government that have produced widely varying results, some good, some bad. The Bible mentions many of these forms and gives a definite preference to the specific one. But before examining that one, consider the 7 general categories that encompass most forms of government. 1. Totalitarianism, a highly centralized government that does not tolerate individualism or differences of opinion. Both communistic and socialistic governments represent totalitarianism, but totalitarian governments can also be led by a dictator, czar, sultan, premier, etc., or in the Bible by emperors, Luke 2:1, Caesars, Mark 12:17, or pharaohs, Exodus 1:14. 2. A monarchy, a government headed by a king, queen, or emirate. It is often hereditary, passed on from one family member to another, such as Stuarts or Tudors in England. There are also limited or constitutional monarchies where a higher law is above the monarch, such as the Magna Carta with English kings. Israel's kings were intended to be limited monarchs, for before any king took the throne, he was to personally write out a copy of the laws that God gave to govern Israel to ensure that the king knew and would comply with the higher law. Deuteronomy 7:18 through 20. And before the people agreed to be under the king and the people would first make a joint covenant with God. 2 Samuel 5:3, 2 Kings 11:17. But most of Israel's kings ignored these commands, and so their government became unlimited monarchies, which is also a form of totalitarianism. 3. Republic and constitutional republic, a government in which the sovereign power is exercised by representatives elected by the people. A weak form of republic is represented by parliamentary systems as well as representative democracies, in which the representatives elected by the people are the sovereign power and rule until the people select new representatives. A constitutional republic is the highest form of republican government and is one in which the representatives elected by the people are not sovereign but are instead subject to a higher sovereign law, a written constitution. This form of elective representative constitutional republic, as described in Exodus 18:21 and Deuteronomy 1:15 through 16 and 16:18, is what the founding father, John Adams, described as a government of laws and not of men. 4. Oligarchy, a government in which power resides in the hands of a small elite group. This includes feudal tribal government, aristocracy, plutocracy in the Bible. The Sanhedrin, Luke 22:66, was a ruling oligarchy. 5. Anarchy and revolutionary, a government without laws where the supreme power is with each individual who does what he wishes or has the power to do. Founding father John Quincy Adams described this as having no other law than that of the tiger or the shark. This would include governments such as those in France during the time of the American founding, when the guillotines became the symbol of government. An anarchic or revolutionary government is described in the Bible as that in which every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Deuteronomy 12:8, Judges 17:6 and 21:25. 6. Democracy, a government in which the sovereign power lies with the people who exercise the lawmaking power through direct majority votes rather than through any elected representatives. Because this government is based on the popular sentiments of the people at any given point in time, it is frequently an unstable and fluctuating government. A democracy is seen in what transpired around Jesus during his final week on earth. As he entered Jerusalem, the people ushered him in with great enthusiasm, treating him as a national hero, Matthew 21:9. But the very next week, the same people all cried, "Crucify him," Matthew 27:21. Founding father John Adams used the term mob rule, and Benjamin Rush mobocracy, mobocracy, terms that capture well the problems of a democracy. It is an unpredictable government where passions and selfishness often prevail over reason and deliberation. 7. A theocracy, a government ran by immediate representatives of God claiming to act directly on his commands. In the Bible, both Eli and Samuel ruled in the manner before the nation changed to a monarchy. Such governments have a complete blending of both civil and religious laws without any separation of church and state and with no input from the people. Many Islamic nations are theocracies, often ruled by an ayatollah or imam, as throughout the Middle East and Asia. While there can be blended forms of government, such as monarchs within parliamentary system, these 7 generational forms encompass most human governments. So where does America fit in with these various categories? Many people today believe that we are a democracy, and our political leaders often tell us we are, but we definitely are not. Our founders had an opportunity to establish a democracy in America and deliberately chose not to. The form of government they entrusted to us was a constitutional republic. In fact, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. That is. Can't remember. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution requires that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. The founders made clear that we were not and were never to become a democracy. Democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. That's James Madison. Remember, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. That's John Adams. A democracy is a volcano which conceals the fiery materials of its own destruction. These will produce an eruption and carry desolation in their way. Fisher Ames, framer of the Bill of Rights. Not only was a democracy a very bad form of government, but as John Adams explained, it often led downward to even worse forms of government. Democracy will soon degenerate into an anarchy, such as anarchy that every man will do what is right in his own eyes, and no man's life or property or reputation of liberty will be secure. And every one of these will soon mold itself into a system of subordination of all the moral virtues and intellectual abilities, all the powers of wealth, beauty, wit, and science, to the wanton pleasures, the capricious will, and the execrable cruelty of one or a very few. America framed its government to elect representatives according to the directive of Exodus 18:21. Furthermore, you shall set out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, those who hate dishonest gain, and you shall place these over them as leaders of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, of tens. We thus elect our own leaders at the local, county, state, and federal levels, and we should elect God-fearing, honest leaders at every level. Significantly, this verse was directly cited by numerous founding fathers and had also been the subject of many influential sermons in the founding era. Exodus 18:21 establishes a constitutional republic. With ancient Israel, God gave them this verse to choose their leaders only after he first had given them a framework of laws to govern their nation. So too, in America, our Constitution, based on God's higher law, what the founders titled Laws of Nature and God and Nature's God, which they also described as the moral law, is the framework to govern our nation. It is a law higher than any elected officials, and a law to which every citizen and government representative must conform. This higher law identified specific inalienable rights that God gave to every individual, which thus provided equality and equal protection for every person in the practice of his God given rights. In fact, our governing documents explicitly attest that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That is, our government exists first and foremost to secure to every individual his God given inalienable rights, including those of life, liberty, property, self defense, religious worship, security of the home, justice and legal proceedings, etc. These rights are not subject to a majority vote or any other vote, ever. The officials we elect do not hold sovereign power but rule only beneath this higher sovereign law. To see the types of laws public officials are authorized to enact, refer to the commentary on Exodus 20 on page 161. We're on page 149. Of the nearly 200 nations in the world, America is the most stable, operating well over 2 centuries under the same governing documents. But it is also the only nation uniquely and correctly identified by the World Factbook, a popular and heavily referenced annual publication of the Central Intelligence Agency, as a constitution-based federal republic. And this has been our form of government since given to us by our founding fathers in 1789. The founders openly affirmed that the Bible had produced our unique constitutional republic. The Bible is the most Republican book in the world. John Adams. I have always considered Christianity as the strong ground of republicanism. Benjamin Rush, signer of the Declaration. Our citizens should early understand that the genuine source of correct Republican principles is the Bible. Noah Webster. A constitutional republic is the highest form of government devised by man, but it also requires the greatest amount of human care and maintenance. Founding father Noah Webster called the schoolmaster to America for his substantial influence on American education, therefore instructed the rising generation. When you become entitled to exercise the right of voting for public officers, let it be impressed on your mind that God commands you to choose for rulers just men who will rule in the fear of God. Exodus 18:21. The preservation of a republican government depends on the faithful discharge of this duty. If the citizens neglect their duty and place unprincipled men in office, the government will soon be corrupted. Laws will be made not for the public good so much as for selfish or local purposes. Corrupt or incompetent men will be appointed to execute the laws. The public revenues will be squandered on unworthy men, and the rights of the citizens will be violated and disregarded. If a Republican government fails to secure public prosperity and happiness, it must be because the citizens neglected the divine commands and elect bad men to make and administer the laws. Noah Webster published the first spelling book in the United States in 1783. He will long be remembered by many as the youthful soldier, the thoughtful politician, the laborious lexicographer, and the Christian moralist, who taught millions to read but not one to sin. His son published this sequel in 1845. In another text, he similarly admonished, "In selecting men for office, let principle be your guide. It is alleged by men of loose principles or defective views of the subject that religion and morality are not necessary or important qualifications for political stations, but the scriptures teach a different doctrine. That they direct the rulers should be men who rule in fear of God, able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness." Exodus 18:21. It is to the neglect of this rule of conduct in our citizens that we must ascribe the multiplied frauds, breaches of trust, peculations, white-collar larceny, and embezzlements of public property which astonish even ourselves, which tarnish the character of our country, which disgrace a Republican government. America's Republican form of government is derived from the Bible, but it can only be preserved as long as citizens know and heed the Bible's directive for choosing the right type of leaders to be placed at the helm of our constitutional republic at all levels: local, county, state, and federal. That's it.